put together a band with some A-list Nashville guys, a rhythm section and a steel guitar player specifically.
He's like, can you get me the best musicians that you can find and then have them play nothing for me? Just nothing.
Welcome to 1001 Album Complaints, the show where lifelong friends, musicians, and guys who show their love through gentle taunting tell the backstory on the most influential albums of all time, as chronicled in Robert Dimery's book, 1001 Albums You Must Hear Before You Die. Now, if you don't know today's album super well or not at all, no worries, we're going to guide you through it. We're going to play song clips while we dive into the backstory of this artist and this album. And along the way, we're going to be breaking these songs down, both musically and culturally, to offer you both our praise and our nitpicky complaints as musicians. And at the end of all that, we are going to vote on whether this album is really a must-listen before you die. If you're a regular listener, thank you and welcome back. But if you're new to the show, let me give you our standard disclaimer. We're musicians. We understand how difficult it is to make truly great art, and we come from a place of love and respect for the craft, but we also enjoy nitpicking and complaining, as the title of our show suggests. We are not super fans, but honestly, even if we were, we'd still enjoy laughing about the way our favorite music got made. So the bottom line is we won't be treating this artist or this album with any particular reverence. Instead, we're going to be talking some loving smack, the way all musicians do in the van ride to the next gig when the radio plays literally any song. My name's Rob. I'm a guitar player with decades of experience playing, writing, and recording music, and I'm here tonight to walk you through the story of a man with an ethereal singing voice who never once combed his hair, not even one time, and his quest to hop onto the countrified acoustic singer-songwriter bandwagon of the early 1970s. I'm talking about Harvest, of course, by Neil Young. So let's get ourselves situated in the music by playing a clip from the lead single and Neil Young's most successful single ever. It is called Harvest. We have been listening to this week. We are going to introduce our panel of complainers for the evening by way of a mean, snarky, tweet-length review. And I'm going to send things first to Tom.
Thank you, Rob. Neil Young's musical suicide note has lyrics that are somehow whinier than his voice. And quick question, why do you hate cymbals, Neil? Is it because they get in the way of your 26-year-old ass complaining about aging? So relatable. Indeed. We're going to unpack that as the evening goes along, but next we're going to throw the microphone to Marty.
Thanks, Rob. I think I read the list wrong, and I've been listening to Harvest Moon all week. Silly me. Just kidding. You know, I'm taking a page from Tom's book, and I have a two-word tweet-length review today. Charming slop.
Oh, wow.
Damn. Okay. Well, excited to get into it. This is Rob here, and my tweet-length review is with the voice of a preteen angel, the guitar skill of a bass player, and a haircut typically reserved for the criminally insane. The softer side of Neil Young piles on the steel guitar, harmonica, and extraneous orchestral arrangements legally required for a hit album in the early 70s.
Yeah, let's get into those orchestral arrangements for a second, man, because I got to tell you, like, first of all, love this album, have listened to it for a long time. Trying to actually parse what makes this album work so well this week, it's the simplicity. Everything is just like so simple on the songs that I love. And then there's these songs with like really rich orchestral arrangements and performances on them. And I actually love them too. I think that they really work, but they seem like they're on the wrong album almost, you know?
I think the difficulty in that regard for me, Tom, is like trying to unfamiliarize myself with this album. I feel like I listened to this album in the womb. I feel like it was playing in the hospital room when I was born. Yeah. It was on every road trip. So like my thought was like, how do I like forget that I have known this album since I was like born? And what would it be like to listen to for the first time now. And it really was like a difficult exercise.
Right. And keep in mind that, of course, we were born a minimum of 10 years after this album even came out. But I agree with its relative ubiquity, and that is certainly one of the challenges. To Tom's point, I do think the album is a study in paradox, and I found myself wrestling with the same question you were just talking about, Tom. What is it that holds it together? Because sometimes it's this kitchen sink, overproduced by most measures approach to making songs for the stuff he does with the London Symphony Orchestra. Other times it's this super restrained, super laid back, no drum fills, barely any bass fills approach. He's barely strumming the acoustic guitar in some of these songs. I think the answer has to be his songwriting. I believe he is a top-notch songwriter. And I also believe, and we'll study it and talk about it in some of the songs, that specifically the songs he writes are perfectly served by his otherworldly voice.
Yes. I have a note on here that like delivery matters so much with this, especially this type of material. There's so little going on for some of these songs. The delivery matters so much. I could not imagine anybody doing a cover of Out on the Weekend and it working. Unless you're just doing like a straight up Neil Young impression. And then it's just going to sound shitty and completely ripped off. Like there's nothing in the musical performances that you're like, oh my goodness, like listen to that sick drums that they're doing. You know, like there's nothing in the piano or even the harmonica lines. There's nothing in it that really says genius. But when you put them all together, they equal so much more than the sum of their parts. And with Neil Young's just sparse lyrics and plain delivery that he has, I think it works incredibly well.
Yeah, you know, in me pretending to have listened to this album for the first time, the thought that came to me was like, is his voice even good? Like, does he have a good voice? Like, I don't know. I'm like, I love it. To me, it's one of the unique voices in American singers, but I was in that mindset. I was like, is this even good? And I think it all comes back to this, we've talked about it before, is that there's just an authenticity to it, how everything comes together. It's almost like executing a vision and getting it right, like most of the time, which is what I like about it.
I think it would be fair to say his voice is not traditionally amazing, but it is singular. And it just jumps off the page at you instantaneously. And yes, it has that authenticity and feeling to it.
Like if I was a friend of Neil Young's, and maybe this shows my lack of imagination, but if I was like 17 and Neil Young was my friend, he's like, I'm going to be a singer. I'd be like, maybe you should work on, you know, some more modes or scales on the guitar or something. Maybe that's really your lane. I don't know if singer is really where you want to go, but I would have been 100% wrong. And again, Marty, this is coming back to like trying to relive that experience of first hearing Neil Young for the first time, because growing up, my parents listened to terrible music, so they were not exposing me to Neil Young. But you hear this name about how great Neil Young is and how all the bands that I liked in the 90s loved Neil Young. And then you hear it for the first time, you're like, oh, this is it? What the fuck, man? And then it kind of worms its way in, and it becomes this calling card of Neil Young is this, you know you're listening to a Neil Young song the second he opens his mouth.
Even on the Crosby, Stills, and Nash & Young albums, you can hear him like separately from the rest of the guys on those albums. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah. Those three guys, their voices come out like the voice of God, and then you got Neil Young's whoa coming in there.
right.
So I do think this is an amazing album, ultimately. I do not think it's a perfect one. Researching it was interesting, in part because it is his most successful album. He's had a long career. He has 7 solo albums on the 1001 list, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's probably too many.
Probably too many. But point is that he is much loved. There are a lot of serious Neil Young fans out there. He's gone through periods. The music sounds different across some of those periods. Again, his voice and his songwriting anchor it and make it consistent. But you certainly are going to hear out there on the internet, and I assume we're going to hear in our comment thread, that this is not the best Neil Young album, and that it is the Neil Young album for people who don't even like Neil Young because it became so popular.
His doo-wop album is the one that I think everyone likes, right?
Right. And so I'll just say right off the bat, I think I probably will easily agree to that. I think that After the Gold Rush might be a personal favorite of mine. That said, I think the highs here on Harvest are extremely high. They are amongst his best songs. You have 3 or 4 songs on here that are just crack songs in the song canon. I think undeniably amazing and well-written tunes. The lows aren't exactly that low, but some of it feels a little dashed off to me. Perhaps you could say that about all of his career, though.
Yeah. The thing that I find to be fascinating about Neil Young, and you hinted at this when you were talking about him wanting to jump onto the countrified singer-songwriter bandwagon, I don't think of Neil Young as ever like being the creator or the forerunner of a particular sound. I don't think of him as the guy who like created a new way to do rock and roll music. I think of him as just like a really good songwriter that can kind of write songs in a lot of different styles of rock and roll music. But then that again leads to like, well, if he didn't start anything, is it his influence that then makes it so necessary to hear him? Or is this another one of those instances where like influence or originality aside, it's just fucking good and you should just listen to it because it's good.
Right. It's almost like, how did folk music reach like Saskatoon or wherever the hell he's from? You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Indeed. I don't think this album is a good example of what I'm about to say, but I think it would be fair to say he helped pioneer some kind of loose, tight, grungy rock and roll aesthetic where the band is not exactly tight, but they have a lot of energy and attitude to how they're playing. And there's a jamminess to it that I don't think was that common. And then, yeah, there's this thread of songwriting and country music, I think, woven in there, presumably based on all his various influences and his contemporaries, things like that. You're not really getting that much of that on this album. Maybe the last song is one of those types of Neil Young songs. Basically, his legacy could be found in songs of a certain type. I think Words is in that category, as are things like Cowgirl in the Sand or Cortez the Killer.
Agreed. And I do think that it is easy to say that he had a huge influence on the grunge bands that became super popular in the 90s. Whether or not he was the guy who started that type of aesthetic or just the guy who popularized it is...
I think he was the first hippie to wear a flannel shirt.
Oh,
Ooh,
there we go.
You know what? We can end this episode right here.
Yeah, exactly. Hell yeah.
All right. One of the things you alluded to it, it's so down and depressed, and it does always blow my mind when you think about the fact that he's A, 26 years old when he's doing all this. B, he's theoretically in love with a Hollywood actress, and he is for sure about to have his very first child. And yet it is so much of a bummer.
Yes. Oh, and also has just come off a massively successful album. One of the greatest albums ever made in Deja Vu. And it's like, oh, woe was me. And I know that there were extenuating circumstances.
Right.
But
It's like
still.
band members are dying left and right.
Yeah.
We're going to get into that in the story. He has some reason, and God love him for doing it, right? He tapped into something where he feels wise beyond his years and world weary beyond his years. But hearing this story about him falling in love and being about to welcome his first son, I know him from interviews in his persona, at least. I don't know him personally, to be a very dedicated father. I think he's pretty into his kids and he's done a lot for his kids. And we won't get into so much of that because it's not really related to the story of Harvest, but it was just a little surprising that he was having such a quarter-life crisis at this moment, right as he's rising to prominence, like you said, Tom.
I mean, he was already famous, right? He already played with that famous show in London at the wherever the hell that was.
Oh, he was massively famous at this point. Yeah.
Well, but what's weird about it is that he's not really been established as a solo artist. I guess it's all relative, right? He certainly was not a household name. Deja Vu had been the biggest success by far, so he was associated with that group, clearly. And recall that when we did Deja Vu, we talked about how they purposely gave the band that very clunky name to try to maintain people's ability to have solo careers. Now, before that, he was in Buffalo Springfield, but at this point, when he's making Harvest, like After the Gold Rush is the album that comes out before this, it's kind of gets lukewarm reviews. I mean, it does okay. He's obviously in the public sphere, don't get me wrong, but he is not a superstar.
Certainly, but he had also put out Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere, which I fucking love that album, but And he was big enough to be billed as Neil Young and Crazy Horse at the time. It wasn't,
Correct. I'm not saying he clearly had a career at this point, and he had some things on the line. I'm not denying that. What I am saying is that I got the impression from reading through contemporary reviews of those pieces and kind of reading about his mindset as I was doing the research that we've now retrospectively put a lot more glaze on how those records were received at the time. You're right. I think both of those records are excellent, and they're certainly perceived that way in the public opinion, but they weren't really shined on as much. And frankly, this one also got some lukewarm reviews when it first came out and then became a hit. And I think people started to rewrite their opinions a bit.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm in that similar boat. When I first listened to this when I was like a teenager, I was kind of like, oh, I expected it was good because, you hear like Keep On Rocking in the Free World with Pearl Jam doing that with him. You're like, oh, Neil Young's a fucking rocker. And then you throw on, oh, what's his most popular album, Harvest? And you throw it on. You're like, what the fuck is this sad bitch doing? Like, come on. But then as a teenager, I was a sad bitch sometimes. And I was like, man, I really want to listen to Harvest right now.
Definitely that. Okay. I think that's a great segue to start getting into the backstory of Neil Young and of the album Harvest specifically. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break. And we're back. So let's get into the background here. And because Mr. Young has so many albums on the list, and we've even already covered one of them, if you include the Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young record Deja Vu, we are going to stay pretty close to just talking about the lead up and recording and release of this particular album, Harvest. But in case you don't know, a quick primer on who this character is. Neil Percival Young was born in Canada in 1945. He's the son of a prolific journalist and author, one Scott Young, who has published over 40 books in his lifetime.
No way.
Including a series about an Inuit homicide detective with titles like The Shaman's Knife.
No shit.
No idea. I thought he came from like farmers.
There's like airport novel mystery type of things, like that we're getting at.
That's my guess. I didn't read one or anything.
Oh, damn you, Rob.
Neil has a quality in his lyric writing, though, that stands out to me. And so that kind of lines up if there's any, influence there.
Absolutely. He has like such a like sparse and direct way of saying things that get the point across with an economy of words that is like a sentence tells a story when he puts it together. Yeah.
And furthermore, I think he could probably teach us a class on songwriting, because the kind of things that he'd want to tell you would be get really specific, and by doing so, you become universal. I think he's very good at that. Okay. So Neil, as I believe was mentioned on our Deja Vu episode, gets polio as a kid. And I think we even mentioned it again on the Joni Mitchell-Hajira episode, since she is also Canadian, also of a similar age, and even from a similar part of Canada than Neil, and also got polio as a kid. But anyway, one side of Neil's body is paralyzed for a time, and the last time around, Tom, who was in charge of the research, said that this had no effect on his music career. Well, tonight, we're going to offer a correction, since that bout of polio could be said to be responsible for this entire album we're listening to right here. That's right. Polio is responsible for Neil's descent into acoustic guitar. It's because though he recovered as a kid, he remained weak on one side of his body throughout his life. And this leads to a serious back injury and eventually major surgery to have some discs removed. And it's during this period where he's laid up in and out of hospitals for a couple years that he writes and records this album. And he even has a period in there where he's in too much pain to stand up and play electric guitar on stage. So that leads directly to him sitting down and using an acoustic guitar.
Well, that kind of lines up with like the love songs that sound like you want to jump off a bridge.
Yeah, indeed.
Yes. Yeah. I got to imagine if you have like several slipped discs in your back and you're like at the very beginning of a relationship, you're like, I just want to fuck you, but like I'm honestly in crippling pain right now. My nuts have like sucked up into my abdomen from how tight my back is. So yeah, sorry.
I'm sure that's exactly what he was thinking.
Probably is.
If only he had Blue Chew.
right. Blue Chew.
There we go. Topical.
Anyway, Neil grows up in Canada. He moves around a little bit as a kid, but ultimately ends up in Winnipeg, which is where he considers his hometown to be. And much like our own complainer co-host, Adam, He loves the Beatles and spends his days idolizing Guess Who founder Randy Bachman.
Yeah. What is his feelings on the Overdrive?
Yes. Canada's favorite son at the time, a few years older than Neil, a big inspiration. I believe Guess Who are also from the Winnipeg area. I'm not 100% sure. You could reference our Guess Who episode. I'm not going to spend much more time on Neil's background here. I want to focus up on the conditions leading up to Harvest, because again, he has a bunch of albums on the list, but he plays in bands in Canada for a bit. Then he immigrates illegally to the US. He hooks up with Stephen Stills. They found Buffalo Springfield, or he joins Buffalo Springfield, another band on the 1001 list. And then eventually Neil breaks away to go solo. His second solo album, Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere, is on the 1001 list. And the next album that he participates in, we've already covered. It's Deja Vu with Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, also on the list. Then his third solo album, later in the fall of the same year that Deja Vu comes out, he releases After the Gold Rush. I already said, in my opinion, it's the best Neil Young album. He's clearly on a roll.
Wait, that's on the list, right?
Also on the list, yes.
Okay.
That's a hell of a run.
That is a hell of a run, and it's about to continue because what? He's riding pretty high on those successes. He's touring with his band Crazy Horse, plus he's doing some dates with Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, plus he occasionally does solo gigs, and somewhere out on the road, he goes with one of his crew to see a movie called Diary of a Mad Housewife. It's starring a woman called Carrie Snodgrass. This is December 1970, and Neil is instantly smitten.
He fell in love with the actress?
He did. He's very literal, as we mentioned. When he gets back to LA, he does a little poking around. He realizes that Carrie is performing that night in a stage production. Weirdly enough, he does not go to the stage production. He sends one of his crew or his guys to go backstage and quote unquote check her out and leave her a note. And the note just says, "Call Neil Young."
He sent a trim wrangler out.
Yeah, I know. Could you imagine?
Good Lord.
Yeah, I should try that.
Apparently it worked. Funny enough, Carrie, who's kind of a big name actress at the time, although I'm not overly familiar with her, but that was a big movie and she was an acclaimed actress at the time. I think she at least has a Golden Globe or something like that. She claimed at the time she had no idea who Neil was, but her roommate clues her in and she calls and they have a date where they apparently meet at the Chateau Marmont, which is a famous hotel in LA where Neil is staying at the time, and they smoke a bunch of drugs.
Okay.
And thus their romance begins. And look, we're not here to dive into Neil's various marriages, but he was in the process of getting divorced from his first wife at that particular point, and he's in love quickly with Carrie, the actress, and he starts writing a bunch of songs about her, including the one where he announces that he's looking for a maid to keep his house clean, cook his meals, and then leave.
I've always loved that line. It's so sad and so also awesome.
Though he does say that the content from that song comes from a light switch that he saw with where one button said man and one button said maid.
Wow.
And that's where the song came from.
Yeah, like an old hotel buzzer of who you wanted to come to the room.
Right, exactly. Right, that's what it was. Right.
I also heard him, because he's gotten a lot of shit from people about that particular song, A Man Needs a Maid, and since we're not going to touch it in the focus list, I'll just comment. Another thing that I heard him say in an interview is that he feels like the word maid meant something different in 1970 than it means now.
I mean, just imagine like watching a movie on TV and being like, I'm going to ask that actress out by using a series of connections I have to pass them a note to call me. And then I end up falling in love and I guess marrying that person.
Yeah. You missed the step where then you get her super stoned on a bunch of weed. And then,
yeah, I also missed the step where I had like 3 #1 albums by the time I was 25.
Do you think he did something with his hair for that first date, or do you think he just let it go?
No, he probably didn't even brush his teeth.
Put braids.
But also around the same time, Neil decides he wants an escape from phony LA society. So he decides to move to the much better half of California, the North, purchasing a ranch south of San Francisco near a place called Half Moon Bay. That ranch is called Broken Arrow, and he sets about refurbishing it himself. And I read that David Crosby put him onto a cool wood shop in Berkeley where he buys a bunch of big walnut slabs and then he's going to redo his walls. by himself or something, or he's just too excited. He gets the fresh wood home and he tries picking one up himself, and this is how he messes up his back quite royally. So immediate results of this, you can probably guess: more drugs for self-medicating, and then quickly an inability to stand on stage without excruciating pain, leading him to focus on acoustic guitar and sitting down during the performances around this time.
Question for you, Rob. Did he ever get into heroin?
I don't think he did, no. But I do think they were taking pills, so there certainly could have been opiates somewhere in there. But I didn't hear about issues with heroin, and I know you're asking that because, of course, of his song, Needle and the Damage Done, and also he knows people who have fallen to that particular addiction.
He was definitely on drugs a lot in his life.
Yeah.
Correct. He sounds pretty fucked up on some of those later albums.
Yeah, Tonight's the Night is like, he's like, sounds like he's on lots of pills.
Exactly. Well, that's the so-called Ditch trilogy, but we're going to get to that. Okay. So anyway, he ends up some point over the next 2 years getting major back surgery, and he has to do significant rehab to fix this issue. But in this period we're talking about, he's just laid up and he's strumming with Carrie at the ranch. Now, Carrie gives birth to a son. They are not married. They never get married, as it turns out. But it is Neil's first child. And even as Neil is writing songs about this relationship, he is expressing doubt. So it's a fast romance. They get pregnant quickly. She's given birth to his first child, and he is still searching for his heart of gold. Now, they end up breaking up after a couple of years, but somewhere in this timeline, around the time his first son Zeke is being born, Neil heads to Nashville to perform on the Johnny Cash television show, and that is going to bring us to everyone's favorite segment. It is Harvest by the Numbers.
Yeah.
Soon to be sponsored by AT&T.
So, first number I want to throw out to you is 58, as in the number of episodes that the Johnny Cash musical variety television show went on.
Really?
I just love learning about these shows that ran for like years, contained lots of content that I would personally enjoy watching that are effectively lost to history.
That's insane. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no way to watch this anywhere.
You can find some of the clips. I watched Neil Young play on the show, you know.
He was like the third or fourth guest. It was like Bob Dylan was the first one, then like James Taylor, and then him, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. It was pretty early on. Next number I want to throw out to you is $350K. That is the price Neil paid for a 1,400-acre ranch in the San Francisco Bay Area in 1970.
What would that be worth in today's dollars?
Estimates are that it is worth around $40 million today.
I was going to say, you couldn't even buy the fucking driveway of that place for $350K today.
All right, we have alluded to it, but the next number is 9. Counting Buffalo Springfield and Deja Vu, 9 is the number of records on the 1001 list for Mr. Young. I like this guy. I like him a lot. This seems like a lot.
Didn't we do at some point in time a total count of the people that appear the most number of times in the list? He's got to be up there.
It does have to be up there. We realize that it can be quite challenging when you factor in producer credits.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, right, because we talked about like Brian Eno or something like
Yeah, and Elvis Costello is
where he's a
way up
producer on a bunch of albums, but then has his
I think those are both good candidates. David Bowie as well, because he produced the Iggy Pop records and Lou Reed's Transformer. Plus, he's got a bunch of his own records on there.
Yeah.
Plus the 3 Tin Machine records that are on the list. I'm just kidding. But what about Harvest itself? The next number I want to tell you about is 6. That is the number of countries where this album went to number 1. That includes the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, and the Norway, and the Netherlands.
Oh, the Norway?
Norway and the Netherlands.
Imagine Canada probably held him in high regard, and he was probably number 1 with a lot of his albums, right?
Well, he's no Randy Bachman.
That's true. Okay.
Yes.
No.
And next up, I want to give you another number, which is 9 million. That is the approximate album sales for Harvest. It has been certified quadruple platinum in the US. It's gone platinum in a handful of other countries. It went triple platinum in the UK. It went diamond status in France. It sold well across the world.
I'm a little surprised that it's at 9 million albums sold. That's a lot of albums. It's a great album, but I would not have thought that it was that marketable of an album.
I'm a little surprised that it translated so well outside of the US. It feels very American to me. That said, he's obviously Canadian, but that's just my feeling about it.
Tom, I can't believe you would say that knowing how many albums Meatloaf sold.
I'm also befuddled by that. Don't get me wrong.
There was some stat in that episode where Bad Out of Hell is like the best-selling album of all time in Australia specifically. And the stat was something like 1 out of 3 households has a copy of Bad Out of Hell currently.
Jesus Christ. Wow.
Last number I want to give to you guys is 5. That's the number of years we've been doing this show, researching, gabbing about albums every single week. It is our 5-year anniversary this week. Congrats, gents.
Woo woo.
1001 Album Complaints premiered in June of 2021 with a listenership of somehow less than 0. Didn't know that was possible. And look where we are now. We've got fans writing us from Siberia, from Norway, from South Africa, from Chile. So thank you for listening. Thank you for going on this journey with us. Thank you for joining Patreon, getting in the comment thread that's happening right now, this second, about Neil Young's Harvest. Tell us why this is lame to like, or I don't really know what you're going to say about this. But we love seeing you in those threads, giving your context, giving your opinions, offering your vote as to whether this is truly a must listen before you die. It sustains us. So thank you for your support all these years. Now back to our story. So Neil's in Nashville. While he's there, he has a meeting with a producer called Elliot Mazer, who had made the Big Brother and the Holding Company record, Cheap Thrills, but had recently left New York and relocated to Nashville to open up a studio there. So they meet, they hit it off. Neil agrees to do some recording while he's in town. He asks Elliot to put together a band with some A-list Nashville guys, a rhythm section and a steel guitar player specifically.
He's like, can you get me the best musicians that you can find and then have them play nothing for me? Just nothing.
Well, there was something like, because I skimmed through one of Neil's autobiographies where he's pretty rambly, so I didn't find tons of super relevant material, but I skimmed through it. I'm pretty sure what he said was that the situation was that Neil Young was like, we got to put this recording session together like in 2 days or whatever. This weekend is the only possible weekend. And this guy Elliot was like, well, all the best guys are like out of town fishing. I'll call the number 2 guys.
Probably still pretty damn good, though.
Probably amazing. Exactly. Definitely. I think the steel guitar player is particularly excellent.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, and the drummer and the bassist both have multiple credits for lots and lots. They were like clearly session pros.
Oh, really? I was going to say the drummer is good. I mean, obviously, he was restrained by Neil's directive to not use his right hand. Tired.
Yeah.
The drums are good, but the recording quality of the bass drum, it sounds like a dick slapping a piece of wood or something.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds a little janky.
Yeah.
I don't know if I described exactly that way. What kind of wood are we talking about? Like cocobolo or like mahogany?
I don't know, like a maple.
Okay.
So again, Neil is not super well known yet as a solo artist. He's not really a household name. Deja Vu had made a splash, but he's fourth billed on that, right? Neil's first 3 solo albums were only somewhat known, and they had initially gotten some mixed reviews, and like I said, they have critics, that is, have changed their tune since then and called them masterpieces. But for the moment, Neil is still trying to build a solo persona. Things are happening fast, admittedly. He had very recently at this point played a solo gig at Carnegie Hall, which was and still is a big deal for any artist, especially as a solo act, right? But he wasn't a household name. And I think that's proven by the fact that some of the Nashville guys have never heard of him, but they show up anyway because it's a paying gig. The first guy they recruit to play is Kenny Buttrey, the drummer, and then Tim Drummond, the bass player, and they help pull in this guy Ben Keith to play steel guitar. So not only did this guy Ben Keith say in an interview that he had no idea who Neil was. He had heard of Deja Vu, but he had no clue that he was walking into somebody associated with that. Basically, at this point, it's just a paying gig for them. Ben's biggest credit is playing steel guitar on a Patsy Cline hit song, which I thought Tom would like, called I Fall to Pieces.
Yeah. Oh, I Fall to Pieces. This is such a good song.
Which just happens to have a coincidentally linguistic connection to Ben Keith's biggest production credit from a 90s singer-songwriter album called Pieces of You.
Oh,
Jewel.
Yeah, there we go.
That's right. Ben Keith produced Jewel's album. So this is the band they assemble. They get this last-minute session together. They immediately bang out two of the most iconic tracks of the album together over 2 days, Heart of Gold and Old Man. They went so fast that I read that this guy, Ben Keith, who I read a long interview with, he mentions that he shows up a little late to the studio, that people are already playing. And so he just set up quietly while they were playing and didn't stop them, and that they'd already gone through like half of the material they were going to record before he even got introduced to Neil Young.
Yeah, interesting.
So he must have had the song in his pocket, right, ready to be delivered.
He did. Neil Young was being extremely prolific at that time. Again, all this stuff is happening really, really quickly. Deja Vu comes out in the early part of 1970. After the Gold Rush comes out in the latter part of 1970. They're already recording this in the first half of 1970 to be released in
1971.
71. Yeah. A lot of this is happening quickly, is my point. They're churning out these records. Neil is writing a lot.
What I find to be the most impressive is how insanely directive Neil Young was to the band. For a guy who has been so prolific and writing so much material, not only did he have like the kernel of the song, like he knew exactly what he wanted it to sound like, so much so that he's like telling people like, play exactly this. I want you, the bass player, to play exactly this. I want you, the drummer, who, by the way, was on like 4 Bob Dylan albums. He was on Blonde on Blonde. This guy is no slouch. And he's like, no, seriously, I want you to play exactly this and only this. That's such a cohesive vision that you don't often get that with songs that have not been labored over for a long period of time by the artist.
That's true. And that was commented upon, right? So a lot of Neil's direction sounds like was less is more. He kept trying to get them to pull back. It's a very short amount of time, right? Again, they do Heart of Gold and Old Man at this first session. And guess who else is in town for the Johnny Cash variety show? It's James Taylor and Linda Ronstadt. So they come by the studio. They lay down some backing vocals on those same 2 tracks. I even found out this week that James Taylor plays banjo on Old Man.
Yeah.
I wonder if the studio musicians knew who they were.
That's a good question.
Probably not. Yeah. It's probably like a north-south thing or something, you know?
I think Linda Ronstadt would have broken through by that point. That might have been pre her doing stuff with Dolly. That definitely was pre her doing stuff with Dolly, but she was definitely, I think she was known around the Nashville scene.
I think she would be known in Nashville. I think that's accurate. James Taylor, I believe Sweet Baby James would have been 1970. So that would have been out. That was his breakthrough record. So I think he was a bit more well-known. And, you know, again, helping to usher in that 70s acoustic guitar singer-songwriter revolution. James Taylor certainly at the forefront of that. And harkening back to what Tom said about how Neil was in the studio, Linda Ronstadt was quoted as saying she was actually completely out of sorts with the speed at which Neil worked in the studio. She said that it was absolutely not what she was used to, that she barely had time to come up with a part, let alone perfect a part. And reflecting on it much later, she said, you know, I was more of like an oil painter. I worked meticulously through things. But Neil Young seemed to have this uncanny instinct to go for the throat, her words. So ultimately acknowledging that his way worked as well. And since we also are not, there were too many great songs to include on our focus list, so we also are not going to talk about Old Man. But in addition to James Taylor and Linda singing background vocals on it, James Taylor playing banjo on it, it must be mentioned, it's a well-known story that Old Man was written about the foreman of the Broken Arrow Ranch that was living there and working there when Neil Young first bought the place, a guy called Louis Avila. Now, the part I never read before this week was that Neil's dad assumed it was about him. And as the record became popular, he was going around town telling his friends about it with pride. He's like, my son wrote this song about me. And such that Neil had to be like, hey, Dad, I didn't write that about you. It's about this dude I just met.
That's so funny.
He just never fucking admit that forever. You're like, yeah, Dad, love you. Happy Father's Day. I did not know that that was about the foreman of his ranch, but it makes a lot of sense when he's saying, look at my life, I'm a lot like you are, because he's probably out there, like you said, lifting wood, doing the same exact shit that guy's doing. He's like, God damn, I all the way here to just have the same shit fucking life that this guy has.
And that's a big ranch. 1,400 acres is pretty damn big.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah.
Neil, after this session, which goes well, Neil then heads to London in March of 1971. He tracks with the London Symphony Orchestra, He records a couple songs with them, including the one where he reduces the mother of his firstborn child, who can most definitely tell he's talking about her, to the role of a housekeeper.
I wonder if the Nashville session musicians ever heard of the London Symphony Orchestra.
London? You talking about London, Ohio?
Right there, we already said it in general impressions, but such a study in contrasts, right? The two different approaches. That is a little bit surprising about it. I'm speculating a little bit, but it's an educated speculation that Neil was still trying to experiment, find his way through a solo career. As we're going to find out a little later, he had also recently broken with Crazy Horse and was purposely trying to seek out other musicians to play with. But the fact that he, on the one hand, goes into the Nashville sessions and is just like, less is more, less is more, less is more. Then he goes and works with the London Symphony Orchestra.
Give me 4 more violas.
But even that's kind of like a lot less than you would maybe think as far as complexity. They're a little restrained there.
It's true, and neither are traditional rock band instrumentation. We do get some of that a little later. There are 2 more sessions for this album. One weekend back in Nashville again in April, where they get a few more tracks done, and then Neil invites the entire Nashville band out to Broken Arrow Ranch, where they end up tracking the rockier stuff like Words and Alabama together in his barn.
That's cool. He must have convinced them of his, if they didn't really know who he was, must have really convinced them of his brilliance or something to be like, okay, we're on board.
They did, and he dubbed them the Stray Gators. That was the band, and then some of them stayed on and toured with him. And
Tom's band is the Gay Straighters.
That's good. That's good.
So Heart of Gold gets released first. This is the first single in January of 1972, followed by the full album release in February. And like I said, it came out with some relatively mixed reviews. Rolling Stone calls it a disappointing retread of After the Gold Rush with new lyrics plus steel guitar. Robert Christgau gives it a B+. He's a little more positive. He says rhythmically it's a little wooden, and Young is guilty of self-imitation and pomposity. But on a positive note, proof that the genteel Young has his charms, just like the sloppy one.
I will say that rhythmically wooden is a fair criticism. And I remember reading that the drummer, Kenny Buttry, was saying, I was looking at Neil's hands as he was playing and trying to just lock in on exactly what he was doing as he was playing. And that's definitely going to lead to not a free flowing sound.
Yeah, and I didn't get a ton of insight into Neil's mindset. I mean, we talked about him wanting to experiment, but I do get the sense that as a recording artist, he likes to do things quickly and in the moment and then move on. And they recorded many songs that didn't make this album too over the course of these sessions, right? And he's one of these guys that has a huge archive. He was just turning out material at this time. Actually, I should also mention that the B-side to Heart of Gold, which ended up being a very successful single, we'll talk about it in a moment, the B-side is a song called Sugar Mountain, which is one of the first songs Neil ever wrote back when he was 19, living in Canada. And I just happen to know that it is a fan favorite of people who really, really love Neil Young, but didn't make the album. Anyway, but despite the critics, you know who does like it? The people. The people like it. Heart of Gold hits #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in March of 1972.
Yeah, I love that.
Just take a moment. We've recently listened to Billboard #1s excessively.
I would love to know what #2 was at that same time.
Well, I can tell you that it seizes the top slot away from Without You by Harry Nilsson.
Oh, damn.
Oh, okay.
And then the following week, it gets knocked off by, get this, A Horse with No Name.
No shit.
You'd think it's Neil Young.
A song that when I heard it on classic rock radio as a kid, I guessed was Neil Young. And I remember my dad saying, no, son, but I'll give you half credit.
There we go.
I thought that was Neil Young forever.
Sounds remarkably like him.
Wait, who is it again?
America.
America.
He's definitely doing a Neil Young impression, sort of, right?
Yeah, but it was interesting to hear that they were more contemporary than I would have thought. Certainly he's heard Neil Young's voice. I think that's sort of undeniable.
Yeah, well, I mean, Neil Young's put out 37 albums in the last 6 months, so yes, he's heard his voice.
Well, speaking of the Billboard Hot 100 in 1972 also, it has some bangers on it. Since I was looking at it anyway. Also, #1 hits in 1972, Gilbert O'Sullivan's Alone Again Naturally.
Oh, love that song.
Don McLean's American Pie. And the Chuck Berry song, My Ding-a-ling. And if you either haven't heard that song in a while or ever, it is significantly worse than whatever you're imagining right now.
And also, if you know about Chuck Berry's predilections in the bedroom, that song takes on new meaning.
So for some reason, looking at the 1972 Billboard #1s just really transported me. Like, what would it be like to live in this world? It's a very different world than the one we're living in now. Anyway, you know someone else who didn't like it? Old Bobby Dylan.
He didn't like it?
No. A guy who recently joined the only group of even pricklier pears than boomer rock star songwriters, Nobel laureates. He was quoted as saying that when he heard Heart of Gold on the radio, he thought it was him for a second, and then he got annoyed that it wasn't one of his songs at #1.
Wow.
What? Oh, it says he's jealous.
Yeah, now to be fair, he said this in the mid-'80s, a real low point for him creatively. But he felt it back in 1972, another low point for him creatively. No, he did, he was quick to say that he liked Neil Young, both as a songwriter and a dude. But he was expressing an anecdote about being confused that someone was playing harmonica and acoustic guitar.
Sure.
Right. I mean, he references Neil Young in one of his songs on Time Out of Mind.
Yeah. And also, Bob Dylan, I love him. Kind of an asshole. And so I could definitely see him being like, acoustic guitar and harmonica, that's me. That's like clearly.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering about, because you hear about some of these big names like Van Morrison and Bob Dylan, and you just kind of hear or see that they're like pricks. But Neil Young, I mean, besides being divorced 100 times, you don't really hear stories about him being an asshole.
That's true. Yeah, he famously had a son with a major physical disability. He started a benefit.
The Bridge School, is that the one?
The Bridge School does a benefit every year. It's been going for, I think, decades at this point. He's very active in it.
2 of his sons have cerebral palsy.
I believe that's true.
From different mothers, too.
Correct. That is correct. But the later born son has much worse, I believe, yeah. So, yes, I think Neil Young is considered a pretty good dude overall. By the way, he's married currently to Daryl Hannah, the actress. Did you guys know that? Yeah.
Really?
I did know that.
No. He keeps falling for actresses, man. So Kill Bill, and he was like, oh, man, I could get me some of that.
So speaking of that, one overarching theme here is at this part of Neil Young's life, he's basically living the hippie dream. This is what I heard him talking about retrospectively. He's got an isolated ranch worth of property to goof around on. He's got a Hollywood actress in his bed. He's got the public thinking he's a sage and a poet. But there is one more piece to that dark puzzle.
By the way, this is literally Charles Manson's dream. Like, that's exactly what Charles Manson wanted. Isolated ranch, adulation of the record industry, and a Hollywood actress for her wife. Yeah.
Except he couldn't get anyone to pay attention to his songs, Tom. That was the problem.
Yes.
That's how we could have solved it. The specter of addiction is also there. Losing friends to drugs and alcohol. And so now let's talk a little bit about Danny Whitten. So Danny was one of Neil's closest friends. He was a founding member of Crazy Horse, the band Neil formed after leaving Buffalo Springfield. He played guitar. He sang in that band. He's around for the early sessions of After the Gold Rush, but was struggling mightily at the time, eventually leading Neil to send the entire band home. He ends up completing that album by himself. That's a story for another time, because that album is also on the list. But side note is, Neil wrote Needle and the Damage Done about one of Danny's overdoses that he had around this time that he survived. So that experience with Danny's descent into addiction is part of why Neil wants to distance himself. And I assume it's also, that he, like we said before, that he wants to branch out and experiment. But after Harvest comes out, it's making a splash. Neil finds himself prepping a band for the tour. And so he invites his old friend Danny to come to Broken Arrow Ranch to join the band again, hoping that he's gotten himself cleaned up, which Danny says he has done. Unfortunately, after a few days of rehearsal, it is obvious to everyone in the band, including Neil, that Danny is still very much under the influence. He can't play along with the songs. He's not keeping up with the band. Neil pulls him aside and tells him it's not working out. There's a bit of an argument. Danny's pleading with him. He's telling him he's got nowhere to go. Neil's like, you're just too out of it, man. I'm sorry. I got too much riding on this tour. He tells him to head back to LA to dry out. He gets him a plane ticket and a ride to the airport. Later that night, Neil gets a call in the middle of the night that Danny has died of an overdose.
Oof, that's rough.
It is rough. A combo of alcohol and either Valium or Quaaludes, which I think he was using in an attempt to stay off of heroin. He was 29, But suffice to say, that really fucked Neil Young up. And it's right before he's headed out on this arena tour, and he's got to sing a song about it. Very, very, very challenging.
Yeah, that's super rough. I mean, we'll talk about it later, but Needle and the Damage Done is fucking haunting. Every time I hear that song, I'm like, oh, it comes from experience, like a place of experience.
Well, and I admit, until I researched it this week, that I always assumed it was written about his friend's death, as opposed to almost presaging his friend's death. But okay, but the Harvest Tour is a success. Neil continues to make records until now, pretty much. Like we said, many of them are on our 1001 list, including 2 out of 3 of his next efforts, the so-called Ditch trilogy, because Neil immediately hated his superstardom and, in his words, headed into the ditch. That includes the aforementioned Tonight's the Night, where he definitely sounds very fucked up.
Like he's in a ditch, yeah. I think he's got 2 albums left in him. He is very old.
Yeah, he is very old, definitely, at this point. And I think very grumpy at this point, but that's also to be understood. But I was thinking back to a song we're not going to cover, the lyrics for Alabama, where he says, your Cadillac has got a wheel in the ditch and a wheel on the track. He was already using that, I guess, mentality of shit's going wrong, you're off in the ditch. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess he was already doubting when he's writing these songs what is the meaning of any of it, which is pretty heavy for a 26 or 27-year-old. Danny's not the first person in his life that dies. There was a crew member, a roadie, who I think had died of a heroin overdose like the year before. Obviously, other major musicians that we all know succumbed to their addictions and things like that. And he just seems very wary of stardom. Then he gets stardom and probably messes him up for a while, which is to be understood. Neil Young in the late 70s called Harvest his finest work, but he later walked that back. And today, many Neil Young fans deride this as the Neil Young album for people who don't like Neil Young. I assume we're going to hear from some of them, some of those youngsters, but what do we think about it? I think it is time to get to some songs. What do you say, my boys?
Oh, can't wait.
Let's do it.
We are going to kick things off here with the opening track on this album. It is called Out on the Weekend.
The woman I'm thinking of, she loved me all up, but I'm so down today. She's so fine, she's in my mind, I hear her calling. See the lonely boy out on the weekend, trying to make it pay. Can relate to joy, he tries to speak and can't begin to say.
This is that song that the first time I listened to the album, I was like, it's kind of an all right song. And now this has become my favorite song on the album. I love this song. It's such an intimate portrait of loneliness that I feel like is so fucking relatable. And there are just some lines in there that like can't relate to joy he tries to speak and can't begin to say. I think back to, ironically enough, like when I was about like 24 years old, and I had like moved back in with my parents. My dad was working nights, and I would sometimes spend entire days like not talking to anybody and just like fucking going about my business, not having a conversation with a single person and feeling terrible and so disconnected from the world. And like this song really spoke to me in that period of my life. And it's again, the lyrics are very sparse and they're very like imagistic, but they're so fucking perfect.
I have to agree. In fact, I wrote down as one of my notes that I remember when we covered Siamese Dream, Tom was joking, not joking, that in his teenage angst, he'd be really vibing on Billy Corgan's All By Myself lines. And this was that song for me, or one of them, right? Into my 20s, just like you said, Tom. I'm such a lonely boy. I'm trying to make it pay. Like, it's a little cringeworthy now to think about those times, but I certainly felt the feeling of this song many times.
It's interesting that lyrically it's down, but the music is kind of upbeat.
I mean, kind of.
It's also very restrained, though. I do think as a production, it is really a triumph. amazing restraint from the players. It would be so easy to do a lot more here.
Yes. I like how you can tell, Marty, you talked about like the drummer being banned from using his right hand. You can 100% tell that he's only using one hand on the drum kit.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
You don't get the hi-hat hit when he hits the snare. It's like tick, tick, snare, tick, tick, snare, because he's doing it with one hand. Like normally it'd be like tick, tick, and then you get a snare and a hi-hat hit on the same beat. It's so very ridiculously restrained.
Yeah, and maybe I should articulate more what I'm saying about upbeat. It's almost that like the sadness is like beautiful or something. There's something going on there where it's like it's not such a downer song. You know, it doesn't come across as like, oh, I feel sad. It's just kind of...
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just a state of mind, I guess. I have no idea. The other comment I have is they have this great pedal steel playing, you know, contrasted with this like obnoxious harmonica playing.
Oh, I like the harmonica.
Right.
Yeah.
I wrote it slightly more annoying than a Bob Dylan harmonica part. You know?
I like the harmonica.
I think in general, Neil's harmonica playing is a lot more grounded in melody than a lot of the Bob Dylan stuff. It does feel like he knew what he was going for. I think Heart of Gold is probably the best example of that, where he's playing something very specific and relatively tight on the harmonica. This is a little more loose, but I would agree. I still like the harmonica here. It's a nice compliment to what's happening.
Yeah, a lot of long notes on it. Bob Dylan, I think, is a lot more like in and out, pa 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 on the harmonica, and there's a lot of long held notes. But Marty, back to what you said, like you're right, there is a little bit of hopefulness in it. Like the line, she's got pictures on the wall, they make me look up from her big brass bed. Now I'm running down the road trying to stay up somewhere in her head. Like clearly you're like laying in a woman's bed. So like, you know, something good's going on in your life at that point.
Yeah, were you doing that when you're in your era?
Yeah. No. I had posters on my own wall and it made me cry. Yeah.
That made me wonder if Dylan was somehow a little extra annoyed because Neil mentions a brass bed here. And Dylan's semi-hit Lay Lady Lay also contains a prominent brass bed mention.
I guess brass beds were a thing back then.
Yeah. Maybe Kenny Buttrey, who I think was on that album, would be like, hey, just a quick note of comparison here, Neil. You sure you want the harmonica and the brass bed in the same song? Okay. You're going to hear from Bob, though. Bob's a bitch.
Let's move things along and talk about the second song on the album. It is the title track, and it is called Harvest.
Now, this is my favorite song.
It's a great song.
The melody is just so good.
I agree. I have to pick this as my favorite song as well, although it is challenging. I think there are a lot of great songs here. It is so simple and so effective, and something about the simplicity where it's really just bouncing between that one chord and that four chord, but amazing melody over top of that. Amazing lyrics.
I wrote that the time signature of this song is 1-1.
Well, you know, it's funny because there is literally one cymbal hit in this song. It is the last hit of the song. He gives a little ding on a cymbal. No other cymbals in the song. But what I find to be really interesting is that the piano almost acts like the hi-hat, kind of keeping that sort of like dent, 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 dent. Like that's the beat that you would almost normally get on a hi-hat. They're sort of doing it on the piano. And again, it's just like eliminating parts.
That's cool.
It's like, we don't need you doing that on the hi-hat. It's already covered on the piano. Why are you going to hit a hi-hat, right? Do less.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I did notice that against the backdrop of so much restraint, and this is from the second Nashville session, as was Out on the Weekend, perhaps unsurprisingly to you guys, he lets the bass player play a couple extra notes in the last chorus only, around 2/4.
That cracked me up because I was like contrasting it with, you know, in like a bunch of those 70s songs, you know that the fade's about to come when the bass player like does a hot lick and they're like, let's get out.
Right. Yeah.
He's like, oh, you played a little fucking passing note in the chorus. All right, we're done. Song's over.
You're like, oh, yeah. That was our best take. The bass player is just like holding back the whole time. And he's like, fuck you. This was our best take. So I played 3 extra notes at the end.
The lyrics in the song are fucking amazing. I love the lyrics in most Neil Young songs, but I absolutely love the lyrics in this song. I hold up 2 lines in songs that I feel like are just like so concise that they tell an entire like relationship story in just the line. And for one of them is, did she wake you up to tell you that it was only a change of plan? I love that line. I've always thought that was fucking amazing. And to me, it like presages a breakup. She's like waking you up to tell you that like, hey, change of plan, but you know, we're no longer going to be together. And the other one is from Graceland. She comes back to tell me she's gone, as if I didn't know that, as if I didn't know my own bed. Fucking amazing. Yeah.
Oh, that's classic. Yeah. That hits. Yeah.
I agree. I single out the only a change of plan line because it also speaks to both the inevitability of the breakup and the inevitability of change, whatever change that might be, and also the humanity of it. Like, hey, it's not personal, but it is happening.
Yeah. And also waking you up, like there can be so many multiple meanings of that. There was like you were literally sleeping and she came and woke you up, and also like snapped you out of the fucking fog that you've been in to be like, hey, this hasn't been working for a while and we need to do something about it. And you're like, oh shit, what? Coming up for air for that, you know?
I also think lyrically, he's doing a good job of doubting himself. He says it's the promise of a man.
Yeah.
It's not the man himself.
Totally.
He's not that man.
No, but notably, he has aged from boy to man. The first song, he's a lonely boy, and now he's the promise of a man. It's there. He's getting there, and then he'll be an old man pretty soon.
There's kind of like maybe possibly a hint of divorce where he says, as the days fly past, will we lose our grasp? You know,
yeah, or fuse it in the sun.
Right, yeah.
So good.
Yeah, he's really terrific. And you mentioned it earlier in the show, Tom, but it's really hard to imagine any other singer singing these songs. In fact, I haven't heard very many covers of these songs for as successful as they've been. And I think part of that is because there's not much meat left on the bone. They've been done in their perfect form, more or less.
Yeah, you can't take anything away from them because they're so simple. And you really can't add anything to them because they're going to just then all of a sudden be less for having more, right?
Indeed. Okay, let's move on to the next song on our focus list. We're going to retouch on the number one single, Neil Young's only number one. It is.
Besides me think that he said, and I'm getting old.
Yeah, that's what I thought even up until right now.
Instead of, am I getting old? That's what it says on Spotify. Maybe that's some weird translation thing, but I was like, huh?
I don't trust the Spotify lyrics. I gotta be honest, like as like a source of truth. I if there was liner notes I could look at, I would trust that.
And I'm getting old.
Yeah.
God
okay,
damn
there
it,
we go.
Spotify.
Fucking Spotify. First of all, this is just such an obvious hit, right? This is the one song from Neil Young that I have heard covered and can see being covered because like just the song itself, absent Neil Young, is just such a good fucking song. It's like so well constructed. It's got a good hook to it. It's a great topic for a song, like fucking amazing. And then you get that harmony and Linda Ronstadt's voice just like somehow elevates itself outside of Neil Young, who's got, as we said, not a traditional, but a great voice. And James Taylor's got a great voice. Somehow, every time I hear that harmony, it just sounds like everybody's just supporting Linda Ronstadt. Like, it's fucking
James Taylor and Linda Ronstadt till the very end of the song.
Yeah, literally, like, how many seconds are they even in the song? 12 total seconds or something like that?
I certainly don't know if he's the first person to do this, but I remember this song really striking me as a young person. It's probably one of the first songs I ever learned on guitar, for instance. But lyrically, contrasting Hollywood with the redwood forest is just a smart kind of, it feels obvious now that I've heard it, but it was a good line. I also want to call out the steel player, who I just think does an excellent job throughout and went on to great success with Jewel. But he says, keep me searching for a heart of gold. And then you get the searching lick from the steel guitar player. It goes, wow, wow.
That's good. That's good.
He at the time was living, the area that ranch is, Broken Arrow Ranch, is in Redwood City. So I think that was, you saying I've been to Hollywood, I've been to Redwood. He's talking about like actually living at that ranch in Redwood City, which I don't think actually has any redwoods anymore.
Well, fair enough. But it's evocative of the idea of the contrast of the glitz and glamour of the city and the California redwoods, right?
I have a couple of comments on the drums. He allows the drummer to do like a kind of a double beat on the hi-hat thing, which is like somewhat stands out somewhat.
He had like a hi-hat budget. He's like, you get like 47 hi-hat hits this entire session. He's like, all right, I'm going to use 2 of them right here.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Okay, well, I'll double it up on this one. And this one is where, speaking of Hollywood and Redwood, this is the one where the bass drum sounds like a dick hitting a wood.
There's no depth to the drum, right? Like there's no like reverberation and boom.
It's almost like they like put the mic against like the skin side of where the beater hits or something.
You don't get a good echo and sound to it. Yeah.
There's no resonance. It's just like donk. Yeah.
Maybe. Because this is from the last minute session, the 2-day session, right? Where he's just calling people in. They don't even know who Neil Young is, and they're pulling this together.
Yeah, I mean, like the bass drum sounds like it could be like a fucking chest of drawers or something like that. He's just like bump, bump, you know.
Right, exactly.
There's also a guitar track that's in the left channel, and I only noticed it this week trying to like pick it apart, listening very loudly in headphones. It's kind of over the end of the choruses, like, and I'm getting old, just like doing those hits. And it's recorded in such a way that you like can't even tell what notes it's hitting. It's just like a percussive sound. But then also it sounds like they just let that track run for the entire length of the song, even though he wasn't in for most of those times. Because like right at 142, he just hits some errant notes in the left channel. Like it just sounds like the guitar player is just kind of like does like a little meh, like oh sorry, didn't mean to do that type of thing, and it's like just left in the mix for something that is so intentional and so minimal. I can't imagine that was like a purposeful thing, like that. Like I want you to hit 3 really weird notes right here. It all so quickly, or maybe it was like a product of the way that it was recorded. It was stuck because they liked some other take that they got. And like, well, we just got to keep that on there because we're doubling up on a track or something.
I was going to say, too, we already mentioned his harmonica playing. This feels like it might be the most recognizable harmonica line in rock music.
Oh, yeah. This is very, very notable and good.
Have you forgotten about the entire Blues Traveler catalog, Rob? And the answer is yes, you have, and rightfully so.
Or maybe like Isn't She Lovely by Stevie Wonder is a memorable one for me, but...
Yeah, but that one is just mirroring the melody, right? This is doing a little bit of its own thing, so it reads a little more like its own part.
I remember thinking a while back, Rob, there was a time where you and I did like, I had bought that acoustic bass, and you and I did like an open mic at our local bar or something like that, where we did some songs with like guitar and acoustic bass, and we did that one at the laundromat too. I was actually putting together a version of Heart of Gold for us to do, and we would have sung the harmonica lines because it seems like a singable harmonica line, and there's like those never exist anywhere else, right?
I remember we played Jukebox Hero. That was pretty funny.
We did, yeah. It actually worked out pretty well.
All right, let's keep this trainer rolling. Let's move on to Are You Ready for the
Stinker on there, don't you?
You know what? Literally the second that I heard that we were covering this album, I was like, well, clearly the low point is Are You Ready for the Country? Obviously. But I also have to admit that if I wrote Are You Ready for the Country, I might legally change my name to Tom Are You Ready for the Country Monahan, because it would be the best song I've ever written. It's like not that low of a low when it comes to, this overall album.
I mostly agree. I did call this the low point, but it is definitely not bad by our standards. Neil mentioned, by the way, that he purposely wanted to cut some of the heaviness and give listeners a break here. And I think it does that with reasonable effectiveness. It's got a loose mess around blues feel. He ends both sides of the record with something that feels more like a band, I think, to break some of the tension up.
Sure. This one, maybe it's just because it fades that it feels less finished and less thought out of a song. I don't think any of the other songs on the album fade, right? The rest of them actually have an ending.
Not sure about that.
I can't say for 100% sure. I was just thinking about that right now, but like it fades, and that makes me feel like it's not as well written. But for me, it's the fucking lap steel tone that I can't get over. It sounds both like piercing and muddy at the same time. They got the worst of both of those tones. It's got too much crunchy bass and way too piercing.
And it's like he lifted the veil on all the restraint, because I think it is the same guys playing in his barn on Broken Arrow Ranch, right? And I know it's intended to be a loose porch jam kind of song, but yeah, it just feels underwritten compared to the titans of songwriting that it's placed next to. That's how we got here. Oh, by the way, Graham Nash and David Crosby do sing backup on this, though.
It still doesn't save it. Yeah.
I think there's something cool rhythmically that happens here where the drums will be kind of straight choppy with the acoustic guitar, and then they'll switch to a halftime beat while the guitar continues to play the same quarter notes, and it adds this weird, slow, fast, dynamic that I feel like he does a lot in his songs. He kind of maybe overuses that, but I kind of like that kind of juxtaposition with the drums kind of controlling the way the song feels, where the rest of the rhythm section isn't necessarily.
That just highlights how all these players are awesome. They're beasts.
That's my as a drummer moment. As a drummer.
Yeah, well, there's not a lot. There's not a lot on this album that you can really call out of like, I like what they did on the drums there. Any person on this call could step in and be the drummer on Harvest.
Right, of course.
Pretty easily.
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's round things out here with the last song we are going to talk about. It is called The Needle and the Damage.
I feel like he's at his like highest range at this song. It's more like the Crosby, Stills, and Nash range where you hear him doing the fucking high harmonies. Like he's kind of doing that in this song the whole time. He's just, and it's almost like his voice is like being pushed to his limit in this song. And it's such a weird, he's just such a high voice. And hearing a high voice with like such dark content is really like jarring. Yeah.
So dark.
I think he plays against that by making the melody very relatively monotonous in a very good way, right? But he's holding these long high notes. Helpless kind of has the same feel where he's at the top of his range. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
The dissonance that he gets into the end of the melody line, because everything's, I hear you knocking at my cellar door. It's just like very, but then, oh, the damage done. Like that's a very nice interval to end that. It's like an unsettling interval to end that on.
I honestly think if Neil Young only wrote this song and then gave this performance of it, you'd already have to put him up there as a top-notch songwriting talent.
This is the best anti-drug song that has ever been written. It is absolutely haunting. And if they just played this song for us and then told the story about Neil Young's friends dying instead of sending us to the fucking DARE program, it would have been so much more effective.
Yeah, it's odd to have like a song that obviously feels very personal to be like, I just made a percentage of millions of dollars from like this song. You probably imagine you'd have maybe mixed feelings about even like
yeah. But I think also it kind of does some good. And the thing that I actually like the most about this song is that he just straight up calls them junkies. That's the most insulting thing you can say about a heroin addict. You call him a junkie.
Or a setting sun.
Well, yeah, exactly. He's not mincing words when it comes to like, there's no hidden meaning to this song. It is like, heroin fucking sucks and you shouldn't do it. Which is one of the reasons why I was like, did he ever get addicted to heroin? Because like, that would be sad if he knew. He knows how terrible it is, as evidenced by this song, you know?
I think it's also a perfectly titled song. I'm glad that he got some artistry into the title.
Yes.
Despite the fact that it is also direct. Right? Coming from that last line, I've seen the needle and the damage done, a little bit of it in everyone, but every junkie's like a setting sun, is a perfectly crafted line. It's perfect.
Absolutely.
Oh, also, this song is very short.
Yeah.
Barely over 2 minutes, and it accomplishes a lot in a very short amount of time.
Packs a punch.
And nothing too crazy is going on with the guitar either, and it's just him. It's him recorded live. Technically, this is the first song recorded for the album, because he's recording it live in December of 1970 at an LA show that he's doing solo when he's doing the solo acoustic tour. And it's so beautiful. Like the fact that he feels no need to go back and do any refinement or add anything.
Right. Awesome. Yeah. Imagine being a Neil Young head and like going to that show and like that closing out. Just like, holy shit. That's just.
Yeah. That opening line, I caught you knocking at my cellar door. I love you, baby. Can I have some more? Oh my God. That's brutal.
It's dark.
That is so fucking dark. God damn. Every time I hear this song, I get chills. I get chills thinking about this song. I realized this week, I always thought, and this is a weird thing to say, but it mattered to me for some reason. I always thought at the end of the song, he's like, but every junkie's like a setting sun. And he went down on that note, but he just holds it throughout, and like the tension of him holding it because you expect him to come down on that note, and it just ends on that tension. No, the tension doesn't go away. It's still just there. Like if that's your life, the tension is just still there. I know that that's like way English majory about it, but like I felt that. I fucking felt that shit. Yeah.
What we're here for. It's what we're here for. Well, I should also say, because I'd be remiss not to mention it, that Neil was doing these acoustic shows, playing a lot of these songs before he went in and recorded them or did the album. And one of them eventually got released as live at Massey Hall. It's a place in Toronto. And what's funny about that is I read in his memoir that at the time, after that show, they listened back to the recording, again, before Harvest came out. And his manager was like, you should release this show. Like, put Harvest aside, release this show. He plays like this song. He plays Old Man. He plays several of the songs, right? Heart of Gold's on there. And it is really, really good. And Neil disagreed at the time, and it took another 35 years, but it is available now.
Excellent.
But is it enough? Have we slathered enough praise on this slab of walnut to get it greased up enough to get up on our wall and refurbish our luxurious ranch? Only the voting will tell. Is Neil Young's Harvest a must listen before you die? I'm going to throw the vote first to Tom.
Yeah, the easiest of yeses. I don't know how much more I can say about how great this album is. We were just talking about Needle and the Damage Done, and something that our listeners might not know is that specifically at the time that we all were kind of going through high school in Delaware, there was a huge heroin problem. And it had affected so many people that we knew and took the lives of many people that we knew over the course of like our high school and college years. It's fucking terribly sad. And I've never, in any other song, has it ever been captured so perfectly, just the tragedy of that entire situation. That alone, as Rob said, if that was the only thing redeeming on this album, it would be a yes. The rest of the album is also fucking fantastic. And so it is an incredibly easy yes for me. There are some times where I'm like, I can't in good conscience tell somebody to listen to this album. This is one of those ones where like, I can't in good conscience let somebody not listen to this album in their life. 1,000% go listen to it if you haven't.
1,001%.
Woo, there we go, Marty.
Great segue, Marty. Why don't you give us your vote?
I bet this is the only album list in the world where this album is shared on the same list as World Click by D Light. It's like so shameful.
You gotta think about our list though. If it made our list or not.
Right. That's right. No, this is on our list. This is on my list. It's absolute no brainer. I mean, I can go ahead and I don't know what of his albums are on the list, but I can kind of right now just broad brushstroke them all on the list. But yeah, this is classic album. And undoubtedly deserves to be on every list.
Yeah, it is quite easy for me to agree with you both. It is an easy yes. Just look at the songs we chose not to talk about. They are titans of songs that we skipped past. Neil Young is an amazing songwriting talent. His writerly voice as well as his singing voice, I think, are completely singular. Perhaps 7 solo albums is too much. I don't know, but he certainly is a huge part of the Western musical canon and must be listened to. And I do think this is one of his great achievements. So absolutely easy yes. Make it so. Ooh, okay. I wasn't really worried about that for even an iota of a moment.
Well, it's because Adam's not on the show.
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
I feel like this one would be the one Adam would like. I'm sure he has some Neil Young complaints, but I feel like he might have been inculcated into Harvest here. Right?
The amount of times that pitchiness would come up on the show if Adam was here.
Fair enough. All right. Well, before we close out the show tonight, I think we have but 2 things left to do. One is to check ye old mailbag, and I am going to reach my hand in there now to see about some epistles that y'all have been sending in. First up, we have David from Australia who writes, I have a thought about the Marty Robbins album before I go and listen to your take. So he's clarifying this is before he listened to our show, which came out a few weeks ago. You see, I listened to this album in 2020 with some mates of mine, and I wanted to share with you the review I wrote for it back then. This is an undisputed classic in the eyes of a certain generation of people. Nick Cave, famous Aussie, drew abundant inspiration from this record. And when I was a kid, this was as common in grown-ups vinyl collections as records by Neil Diamond or Tijuana Brass. Heaps more common than, say, Abbey Road or Ziggy Stardust. Going out on a limb here, this album, Gunfighter Ballads and Trail Songs, says more about what is wrong with American culture and why guns are intrinsically linked into it than it does about anything else. It's not the cause of those problems, but an expression of them. These are stories of a mythical, semi-lawless frontier land where alpha males wielding firearms strike fear in the hearts of lesser men and carnal desires into women. The idea that somehow by carrying a gun you're more of a man, and that two men can solve their problems by shooting at each other, inevitably leaving one of them dead. Songs like Big Iron encapsulate this entire idea in 4 succinct minutes. Take a listen and tell me otherwise.
He's not wrong.
It was a big part of the Western movie and television show as well at the time, just mythologizing this. I'm just out there with a pistol, peacemaker, righting wrongs, you know?
It's no Crocodile Dundee. It was like, no.
It's a good bush, Marty.
Visit the later works of Yahoo Serious.
I wanted to bring it up because I don't quite think we as Americans got to that on the show, and I certainly think he has a point. It's very ingrained in American culture, that idea of, call it manifest destiny, and taming the frontier with your big iron is definitely in there. So I thought that was an interesting idea that, frankly, we did not really touch on the show. So thanks for sending that over. As you probably know, it's a little hard to see the outside of the fishbowl when you are, in fact, in the fishbowl.
And you got to dodge all them bullets that are coming at you.
Or when you have a massive gun collection.
I wasn't on the episode, Marty.
Okay. We have one more here. Listener Charlie writes, Complainers, I've listened to all your episodes over the past several years, and I really enjoy your show. Most of you have pretty good musical taste. I think Marty's taste was the most mysterious, but then he hosted the Yes episode, and I gained new respect for him.
Ooh.
I appreciate Rob's openness to a wide variety of music, but Bruce Springsteen sounds like he's had too much cheese in his diet and is trying to push something out when he sings, so I don't get that. Adam is the perfect participant to hear things that the rest of us have heard 1,000 times, but he hears for the first time. Alan seems like the chill guy who you'd really want to hang out with and agreeably discuss the pros and cons of anything. My wife thinks Phil is Jonah Hill whenever she hears me playing the podcast. Tom has the most fun opinions on things.
Yeah.
Because I think, like me, he understands that people can only disappoint you and that life is just a series of terrible things you have to endure.
Okay, there we go.
That all makes perfect sense.
It really does. Yeah, I sign on to this.
In any case, I'm writing about your review of Smashing Pumpkins' Siamese Dream. I have no quibbles about your thoughts on the album. In fact, I gained new respect for it through the great background info and analysis of the tracks. They really do rock. However, I had thought you were all fans of The Simpsons, just like myself. I was a senior in college when it started, and we planned our week around being available to watch it on Sunday evenings. Imagine a world with no Simpsons reruns or streaming. They had a great episode called Homer Palooza, where Homer goes on tour as a sideshow, taking cannonballs in the stomach, and one of the highlights was meeting Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins. Billy Corgan introduces himself as Billy Corgan, Smashing Pumpkins, and Homer says Homer Simpson.
Homer Simpson smiling politely. Yes, there we go.
You see, smashing is a verb. We debated that on the show. Anyway, it's a real missed opportunity, gentlemen. I'll keep listening to make sure you get in the necessary Simpsons references in the future.
You know what? I got to own up to that one. Fair point. Fair point.
And also, don't go there, because you'll be proved wrong so quickly by the deep Simpsons knowledge on this podcast. This podcast could easily spin off into a Simpsons podcast on just the episodes that featured musicians and every quote within.
Some might say the origin of our entire friendship is The Simpsons.
Yes.
Because my first interaction ever with Tom was a Simpsons trivia off, where I challenged him. We went toe to toe in the halls of our high school, and we both proved why we didn't have girlfriends.
Yeah, I was going to say a crowd of adoring girls watching intently. Who's going to win?
In any case, we'll get back to referencing The Simpsons in no time. We appreciate everything you send over to us, anything that's in your heart or on your mind, what we got right, what we got wrong. Send it on over to 1001albumcomplaints@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. And next up, we have to get our homework for next week. Tom, do you have the Albinator over there?
I do. It has been crying in not the corner, Marty. Yeah,
course not.
It bought a 14,000 acre ranch, and it's crying in the corner of that large home down there.
Right.
But I'll see if I can get it to catch a cab back up here to my certainly not large house and spit us out another album. So without any further ado, drum roll, please. We will be listening to... The album is The Blueprint, and the artist is Jay-Z.
Okay.
Another folk singer, I think. I've never heard of this Jay-Z.
Does he have a ranch?
Yeah.
I can tell you I know exactly no songs from that album.
Exactly no songs from that album? I think, is it the one with...
Is Hard Knock Life on it?
No, because that's volume 2.
Okay, well, that's the only Jay-Z song I know. So.
Well, we hope you listen along, whether it's a first-time listen or you're spinning it for the 1,001st time. Doesn't matter to us. Join us in listening to Jay-Z's The Blueprint, and we hope you join us again back here next week to discuss it and tell the backstory behind it. For everyone here at 1001 Album Complaints, I have been Rob.
I've been Tom.
I've been Marty.
Boosh.